where my 6-year-old had 6 baby teeth taken out under full being taken under, because they were just bad. They were just not strong. They were rotting in her mouth.
Susanne, how did you find carnivore?
Right. I'm going back to 2008 or 9 when I found carnivore. I found the original message board that Charles Washington was running, zeroing in on health. And I was on there for a few months, and I was carnivore for a few months. But this thing kind of was in the context of a bigger picture, which is that when I was 18, talking about sort of the year 2000-ish, I went vegan. And at that time, as I say, 18 years old, this had nothing to do with health. It was all about my ethics. It was the time of the mad cow disease, where I saw like hills of burning cattle on TV, and I just decided I want nothing to do with this. And, going on to the sort of fairly new internet, there was quite a lot about factory farming, the suffering of animals, and I simply decided I don't want anything to do with that. And I went vegan, and this is about 2000. Now, I haven't been vegan consistently throughout, of course, because I did have that carnivore time, but really my ethics were, up until 2020, that veganism is the right thing to do. And more often than not, the overwhelming amount of time, I was vegan. And I always struggled my entire adult life with my weight. I never, ever got skinny. And I like to sometimes say I'm a poster child of the fact that calories don't matter. Calories don't actually work. The whole idea of calories in, calories out. I have been on a vegan diet with no fat added, following the sort of Whole30, McDougall program, Essel Stein, all of those, since the early 2000s, where I literally ate no added fat, no nuts, no avocado. We're talking literally just vegetables, and actually fairly limited starches, fairly limited rice, potatoes, and so on. It really majorly just vegetables. And that I was easily able to eat between 800 and 1,000 calories a day for months and months and months. And in college, I was also fairly active. I would take 2 or 3 fitness classes in a day. I was, physically active, and I was okay. I think at that age, my sort of youth helped to me to survive all that. But the fact is, I never, ever got to a point where I looked skinny. I'm a muscular sort of build, and I've always carried a bit of a belly. And that's even at that sort of 800 to 1,000 calories with all that exercise, never, ever went away. I was never at a place where I thought, yeah, okay, I'm good now. And even BMI wise, I was never low on BMI, never even in the middle. My weight has always been high, normal. And of course, I've also gone into overweight and obesity later on, because I just kept gaining. And it didn't matter how much I ate or how little, how much I restricted my carbs, because even on that vegan diet, I could restrict my carbs to some degree, because the less grains and rice and so on, just bulk up with vegetables and really nothing else. And yet my body held on, absolutely held on. And every so often, I guess in that time, I would get to a point where I was so annoyed with it and so desperate with it that I would try something like carnivore, because that's really why I went carnivore in sort of 2008-9, because I was at that time highly, highly overweight, if not obese. I wasn't feeling very well. I didn't have energy, and I found that, and I thought, yeah, I'll do that, and I did do it for a few months. But I think my ethics never shifted. I never understood that eating animals was okay. So I lived in that tension. I always had that tension between, I really want to be skinny and I really want to do this and feel better. And on the other side, I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to hurt any animals. And so I think that cognitive dissonance meant that I just couldn't stick with that all the time. I did it for a few months. It didn't give me a revolutionary weight loss, which might have convinced me. I just stayed the same. I felt good, but I stayed the same. And that could be because I eat a lot. You have to remember that when you're vegan, the amount of food, the amount of sheer sort of volume of food is enormous. And so if I carried that into my carnivore life, you can imagine that probably was thousands and thousands of calories. Again, I don't think it matters that much, but I think it does have maybe some bearing. So I'm not sure why it didn't completely work at that time. But I think that cognitive dissonance between my ethics and eating the meat just got me to a point where at the end I was like, no, actually, this isn't doing the thing I'm after, the weight loss. And so I let it go again and I went vegan. And I have actually remained vegan from, I want to say 2010 through to 2020. That was strict vegan the whole time. During that time, I had my children. I had 2 kids. And it was in 2020 where my 6-year-old, who my both the kids were vegan as well, where my 6-year-old had 6 baby teeth taken out under full being taken under because they were just bad. They were just not strong. They were rotting in her mouth. And this is, of course, despite her never having sugar or hardly ever, and good tooth hygiene, cleaning teeth, of course, all of that. But her teeth just weren't strong. And that was kind of my wake-up call. That was my wake-up call in 2020, where I then started thinking, I've been told my entire adult life as a vegan, this is the healthiest diet on the planet. This is the best for the environment. This is no suffering and all of that. And here my child should be the healthiest child ever. But look at her teeth. Why is this not? Why is this? And then I started sort of looking, and of course, teeth leads me directly to Weston Price, the dentist you may have heard of in the 1920s, who went around the world looking at indigenous tribes and their diets. And that is kind of when it clicked that that is not a human diet. There is no human tribe that has ever lived vegan and thrived. And that really was my sort of wake up call. I cannot do that to her. I think that I prevented the worst with both of my children by breastfeeding them for quite a long time. My daughter, I finished when she turned 5, and my son was 4ish. So I think that prevented worse health issues. But yeah, when she was 6 and all of that happened, I pretty quickly started reading a lot in a short time. So I read the whole Weston Price, the original book. What's it called? Physical Degeneration, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. A mouthful of a title. So I read the whole thing. And then, very crucially for me, I also read Leah Keith's book, which is called The Vegan Myth or The Vegetarian Myth. And that finally got my ethical understanding to the point where I realized actually all of this propaganda that I just never interrogated because I was already vegan is actually just that. It's actually just propaganda. It is not better for the planet. It is not better for the animals. It is not better for health. And that finally got me to a point where I was able to embrace eating animals and actually be okay with that, rather than just sort of feeding the kids that because I felt like I needed to. And now I've been fully carnivore since February of last year. So I've just had my first anniversary. And this is, I don't make exceptions. I am carnivore, and there is no kind of exceptions to that. I think I also have to go back a little bit to say that I think being vegan and this kind of crazy 800 to 1,000 calories in my 20s built an eating disorder that I didn't have before. So from my mid-20s onwards, I had pretty uncontrollable binges. And I mean really uncontrollable, really bad binges. I was never bulimic. I could never make myself throw up. But it just meant that I had these kind of terrible binges of food I absolutely could not control. And in my 20s, I then found something called Grey Sheet, which is similar to AA, a fellowship for food addicts, in which you literally follow a grey sheet, it's printed on grey paper, hence why it's named Grey Sheet, where you have a list of foods that you can eat and nothing else. And these foods that you can eat do not include grains, sugars, or starches. So We're talking protein and vegetables and one fruit in the morning. And that has to be weighed. Every bite has to be weighed, 3 meals a day, nothing in between. And the 3 meals have to be committed to a sponsor the day before. So there is no meal changes on the day because I feel like it. And that really took out for me the choice element, and it took out for me the kind of I'm in charge. It put someone else in charge of my food because I clearly couldn't manage it. And I was in recovery, if you want to call that. Even still vegan, because you can't get vegan proteins. It basically means that you depend on soya, and there is no other protein to have. But it worked for me for that time. Just that discipline to learn. Actually, this is a normal portion size. These are 4 ounces of protein. This is 8 ounces of vegetables. I had to weigh it. Um, and that was helpful. And I actually was on that program all the way to last year, February. The only reason I left it was because I went carnivore. And of course, in this program, I had to have the vegetables. You have to have everything that's there. And so I couldn't be. And I think I was at a point where I felt like I have learned the discipline of snacking is just not something that occurs to me. Eating emotion is just not something that occurs to me. It's just not there anymore. It's been that discipline, 3 meals a day, nothing in between but coffee, tea, diet soda, whatever. That's what the program teaches, these 3 meals. And that has been a really, really good kind of, for me, the foundation that gives me now the ability to follow this without exception, because I've already not eaten sugars, grains, and starches in many years. So I haven't had withdrawals. I haven't had to deal with that. I've just eliminated the one fruit in the morning and all the vegetables, and I've carried on. I do eat more than 4 ounces at each meal now. On Grey Sheep, it was 4 ounces protein at breakfast, 4 ounces protein at lunch, 4 ounces protein at dinner. Now I eat much more freely. And even yesterday, I went out. My husband took me out for a early Valentine's dinner. And on Grey Sheep, I would sit there with a scale. I would cut up my food and put it on a separate plate and weigh it. So for me, eating out was always very stressful. I hated it. I never did it. And yesterday, to sit there in front of a beautiful steak that I could eat from beginning to end and just enjoy, and not worried about people looking at me with that scale. That was just a wonderful experience. And we don't eat that much, but that was beautiful. So yeah, I feel much, much freer now.
That's really
That's where I am
nice.
today.
Yeah. So, did you experience any difficulty moving across from doing the grey sheet to going carnivore? Was it easier, harder because there's not as much discipline involved, or?
I think I had already, like, the discipline piece was there. That was just ingrained in me by then. So I found it easy. There were changes. There were changes physically for sure. So weight-wise, on Grey Sheep, my lowest weight, I'm 5'2", was 58 kilos. But by the time I left Grey Sheep, I was back up to 62. My weight, like I say, my body just wants to be at this. And the fact is, going carnivore, there's been a lot of experimenting, how much is volume is right. I don't know how to eat intuitively. I mean, for years I have weighed my food. And whether I'm sad or whether I'm happy, whether I'm ill or whether I'm hungry or not, 4 ounces is 4 ounces. So there is no intuitiveness about this, because I just think that I have managed to absolutely break during my vegan years. So I'm not sure I've got, or maybe it's coming around slowly, but I did not have an intuitive sense of, okay, this is enough, this is too much. So I had to experiment quite a lot. And in that year between then and now, so right now I'm actually at 67 kilos. So I've gained 5 from when I left Grey Sheep. However, I will say the other day I tried on my summer dresses from last summer and they fit. So I'm not sure where the weight has gone exactly. And again, maybe weighing yourself, as people often say, isn't the end all and be all. Yeah. So I'm heavier, but I don't seem to have changed all that much.
Right. And you must be feeling better.
Yes. there were definite physical changes in that the first, after 2 months, yeah, I think the second month after starting, I had a period that lasted 2 weeks. And then the month after that, I had a period that lasted 3 weeks. And then the month after that, another 2 weeks of period. So I was thinking, my goodness, something is happening. You can tell something's going on. And previous to that, my periods had been very regular, but also extremely painful. Every month, I would have a day where I just barely could move. And after those 3 months of really long, it went back to my normal length, 4 or 5 days every month, and pain-free. And that is for the first time in my life that I'm not in excruciating pain every single month. So there is a big shift happening in the hormones. I did have time in my 20s when I was on that very low calorie diet where I had 2 years with no period. I think that's fairly normal with vegans. But while binge eating, it was definitely all over the place. But with gray sheet, it was normal, but painful. So I think gray sheet kind of, it's not quite keto, but it is a healthier way to eat, certainly, than vegan or even than standard diets. So my body was kind of all right, but I didn't realize that it would even be possible to be pain-free. So that's amazing. That is to me that the most clear, the most kind of irrefutable evidence that something has happened on the inside that is much better than it's ever been. And I'm now 45 this year. So, before I went carnivore, I was thinking, yeah, maybe there are some symptoms. I'm noticing I can't sleep very well. Maybe there is some perimenopause stuff going on. None of that is going on now. It's just, yeah, I'm just back to normal, if you like.
Yeah. And speaking of sleep, how's that now?
Mostly good, mostly good. I have a dog. He's not in the room, thank goodness. I have a dog who insists to go from bed to bed in the night, and that is so annoying. So he will literally just, he'll go from my bed to my daughter's to my son's, and and like whenever he gets kicked out, he then goes to the next one. So it's um so for me, when that used to happen, I would then sometimes be hours before I could go back to sleep. Now I just kind of I will lift up the duvet half asleep. He will get under, and I'll put the duvet down, and I'm asleep again. So yeah, it's not an uninterrupted night, but it's much better than it was.
Oh, that's great. So like, I'm just trying to get my head around 800 to 1,000 calories,
For months and
and
months.
yeah, and so you said you went through a period of being overweight and obese. Was that when you were doing those 800 to 1,000 calories, or is that when the
Was
ED
after the
had kind
dam
of
broke.
taken hold?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was kind of after the dam broke. So for me, I went with this sort of, yeah, 800-ish calories, sometimes 600, um, during my college years. So I wanted to say sort of 20 through 22, thereabouts. And it was, and I still remember the day that it broke, was that some friends decided to take me out for dinner. And I decided, okay, that one meal, I'm just going to eat whatever I like, not to worry about it. It's my birthday. And I went out and I had, for the first time in like 2 or 3 years, just regular food in a restaurant. And it absolutely was like a dam broke. Suddenly the floodgates were open. I couldn't close it again. I could not go back to that 800 calories thing. I just couldn't. I found myself gaining 50 pounds in the span of 3 months because I was binging uncontrollably. I was eating absolutely everything. It was almost like I had to catch up with all the food I hadn't had before. And people, of course, saw that. Many people are too polite to notice, but yeah, I mean, it couldn't not be seen. 3 months, 50 pounds. Yeah.
Yeah. It's I can understand. I can kind of imagine the situation because that's what I would be like with smoking or
Mm.
drinking. If someone said
Yeah.
just come and have one drink, just one, and that would be like, yeah, the dam's broken. Just be
And
like,
this is why
drink.
Grey Sheet worked for me. Exactly. This is why Grey Sheet worked for me because it's built on the AA idea of complete abstinence. I cannot just have a bite of sugar. I know I can't. I know I've been there. I've tried it. It doesn't work. I don't want to do it again. one is, as they say, one is too many and 1,000 is not enough. If I start with the one, I'm gone. And so
Yeah.
that's why I don't mess with it now. I'm carnivore. I don't mess with what I eat. There is no such thing as cheating, because I don't trust that I'll be able to find myself again, and I don't want to be 10 years down the road morbidly obese and sick. So, and then wake up again. Yeah.
Right.
So I very much treat it as
So
an addiction.
yeah. Yeah. So um on you mentioned before, I think, like you kind of have to have a plan, or you have to have some structure. Like are you eating day to day?
Yeah, well, I've had a year now to experiment around. So at the beginning, I very much kept it gray sheet wise, 3 meals a day, nothing in between. Um, and I have found that I've always been a bit of a volume eater. I like to eat a good amount and feel nice and full. And I find that doing that 3 times a day is not good for me. It doesn't help me to be full of energy. It doesn't, and I think obviously I gain weight on that as well. So where I'm at now is I'm eating 2 meals a day, and I have a breakfast, and then I have a lunch that's very, very big. And after that, I'm actually not hungry. I don't need to have anything in the evening. And I had found a few times that, after eating quite late, I didn't sleep, or I couldn't go to sleep very well because my tummy is full and doesn't feel good. And actually just skipping dinner, um, when I'm not hungry at all, I think that's key. I don't want to go hungry. And I think for me, it's a bit dangerous to get too hungry, because again, I don't want to lose the kind of, the peace I have. I think that's very important to me. So a good sized lunch sees me through till the next morning. So I'm naturally fasting maybe 19 or 20 hours a day.
Right. And is that basically those meals are made up of, like, for example, eggs and steak, or eggs and ground beef, or?
Yeah, breakfast is well, yeah, I am a creature of habit, and I will eat the same thing day after day. And that was the same on vegan, it's the same on gray sheet, the same food every day, simply because I don't have the brain space to think about it. And if I like it, I like it. I don't mind no variety. So my breakfast is always scrambled eggs, and then maybe 4 hours-ish later, it's meat of some sort. I did find out over the course of the year that I just do not like ground beef. I've tried it in every iteration, and I just don't like it. There's something about the consistency I just don't get on with. So I don't eat ground beef. My food is usually diced meat, so diced pork, diced beef, which I actually have a lovely butcher nearby where I go and I say, can I have just fatty diced beef, fatty diced pork? And it's got a good amount of fat on, and I air fry it, and that's my meal. I've actually gone into now buying like 10 kilos of it, packed into bags of, let's say, pound and a half or something like that. And I take out the pack, I stick it in the air fryer. That's my meal done. Don't have to think about it. So I think the other benefit I probably have of the gray sheet is that food literally is just food. It isn't my entertainment. It isn't my feel good, pick me up, any of that. Food is food. I need it. I appreciate it. I enjoy it, but I don't look to it to entertain me or make me feel better. Any of those things.
It just becomes like a bit of a functional thing, like,
Yeah.
eat, enjoy, and then move on.
Yeah, and I think the enjoy is important, because I think if I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't. This wouldn't work for the long term. So I do want to look forward to my meals, and that also helps me to not want anything else, because I don't feel like I'm missing out. I mean, I live with my 2 kids and my husband. Obviously, they're not carnivore. Mind you, with my children, it's been a bit of a transition, having grown up vegan. Grown up. I mean, they were 4 and 6 when we changed over. So, but they hadn't had any meat before. So it's still now, 4 years later, a bit of it's work to try and get them to eat meat, because meat is different. It has a different texture. There's nothing quite like it that you can get as a vegan. And the taste, the texture, it is still a bit of a struggle. There are things that they like, but trying to broaden their palate, sort of at the ages of 8 and 10, is a real struggle, to be fair. So yeah. So there's lots of other things that aren't carnivore in the house, but that's not
Yeah.
my.
So your husband has kind of seen you go through this journey. How does he feel about you being carnivore now?
Yeah, I was vegan when we met, and he was a meat eater, and I never bothered him about it because I thought, that is my choice, that is his choice. It's absolutely fine. We never had sort of issues with that. And he decided to go vegan for some years on his own. So I want to say maybe 6, 7 years ago he went vegan and then we were both vegan until I changed, but he wasn't ready to change back. So he actually remained vegetarian, not vegan, but vegetarian for at least a year after the kids and I went to meet. And eventually I gave him the book to read, The Vegetarian Myth, and he came around. So he does eat meat again. But he's not carnivore. He's not, he eats his vegetables. He still has very much a sweet tooth. That's, yeah, he's not dysfunctional. The difference between him and me is I have no such thing as moderation. I do not do moderation. It's one of the reasons I've never touched alcohol. But he is a moderator. He can drink his glass of whiskey once a week to relax, and that's that. Now, yeah, that's just not me. And the same
That
with sugar.
Yeah, that's why, when you have some people saying, just it's just one. Come on, it's just
Yes,
one.
exactly.
And
Don't worry
so
about it. Yeah,
you don't understand. We are
yeah,
very
yeah,
different kinds of people.
yes, yes, exactly. I don't get him. I don't get how he does that. And he doesn't really get me either, but he gives me the space. He knows that this is what I need and he's supportive of it. So it's not like he waves the sugar in front of me, but yeah, he
Right.
just keeps his own way. Yeah.
Yeah, like, sometimes you'll see someone do a magic trick and you're just in awe of the magic trick and it's like, that was amazing.
Yes.
How did they do that, right? That's what I'm like when I see someone take one piece of candy and then put the box aside.
Oh
It's
gosh,
like,
yes.
how did they do that?
What do you mean you have leftovers? Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. What? Yeah, yeah. So, I think for me that the kind of the addiction mindset is helpful and has been helpful because I know I don't want to have one. I just know I don't want to have one. And Gray Sheet has taught me very well to say no to people and to just no is a full sentence, no thank you is a polite full sentence. There you go.
Yeah. So your plan is to keep going with carnivore?
Yes, I want to keep going. I feel like finally I'm in a place where I'm just at peace. I'm not hungry in between meals. Like even on Gray Sheet, I would get hungry towards my next meal. And now I'm at a place where if I do get hungry, like in the morning before I have my breakfast after, say, 19 hours of fasting, that is a very, very bearable kind of hunger. It's not the sort of urgent, you have to have something now sort of hunger. And, not having that peace and knowing that what this has done to my hormones, which is very tangible and very clear every month as I get on with my life, um, that alone will keep me. The fact is that I'm still not at a happy place with my body weight. Of course not. I'm at 67 kilos now. That puts me officially in an overweight category. The fact is, though, also that I am just a muscular build. Always have been, always will be. I will never be a ballerina build, much as I might want to look that way. But the fact is, there are certainly parts that I feel could do with slimming down, Um, but I have to trust my body now. And I think I'm just at an age perhaps where I'd rather be well than be thin. And I'm well. And so if it never goes down, if I stay where I am, then I will begrudgingly live with that. And I don't look in the mirror and hate myself. It's not like that. It's just, yeah, every so often I'm like, yeah, I can, yeah, I'd like to get rid of that. Um, but if it doesn't go, it doesn't go.
But
Yeah,
the
I'm too
kind
old
of
to be enough.
the peace and the contentedness and the feeling of well-being kind of trumps everything else though, right?
Absolutely. That is worth that is worth so much. You can't even say. Yeah. So after 20 years of absolute madness in the food, really. I mean,
Mm.
managed by Gracie, of course, managed, but it never left me. The obsession with food, the kind of preoccupation with food didn't really leave. Hasn't really. It was managed with Gracie, but has left now. It really has. And I am aware, remembering with the addiction mindset, I can have it back anyway if I so choose, but I don't have to.
So, whereabouts in the world are you?
I'm in Bristol, UK.
So, in the UK, it's a very, very long time since I've been there. So, in the UK, is there a bit of a push towards plant-based, and do your friends or extended family kind of look at you and say, "Why are you only doing this meat thing? What's going on?"
There was a bit of a push towards that, and that there was quite a lot. I mean, when I went vegan, these we're talking about 2000s, you had to go to special shops to buy sort of beige, watery soya bean juice and call it milk. That was what it was. Now you go to any supermarket, you get 5 different types of nut milks. So the choice is there, and certainly, but I really think it's gone down from where it was. The popularity has waned a little bit. Um, because I remember paying, like, without thinking about it, £3 for a litre of plant milk. My regular milk, I buy raw milk from the farm, is £1.20. So, I think with the economic crisis that's been there, the prices of all that vegan food, or especially, all that processed vegan food, that people just can't, and people just then choose not to. There is much, much more of a push that I see in Europe, in continental Europe. I'm originally from Austria, from Vienna, and I go there with my children every year for 6 weeks to help them with their German. And while there, the prices of meat are incredible. So there is a real push towards trying to get people away from meat. The portions you buy like a 300-gram portion, or your pack in the supermarket of, let's say, ground beef is 300 grams. That's for a family. That's their idea of the meat that you should be eating, the amounts. So it's tiny amounts, very expensive. So yeah, there is much, much more of a push there that I see. But I'm not one, and I never will argue with a vegan. I was in those shoes. No one could ever have argued me out of it. I think it's enough for me. Sometimes I will say I'm an ex-vegan of 20 years, and if anyone gets curious as to why I'm not now, I'm happy to talk. But I never try to convince a vegan. It's you cannot shift a you cannot have a paradigm shift in one conversation. I think what it takes is a bit of a pebble in someone's shoe, and then they start thinking and they start thinking, and eventually, but it's a process. Yeah, and veganism is not something you can argue out with somebody in an hour.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit like sales and marketing. Like in sales and
Mm-hmm.
marketing, you have a sales funnel, and people at the top of the funnel, where that's where the most of the people are, they're like cold. They're not interested in your product.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to get
Mm-hmm.
them down to the bottom of the funnel where they're ready to buy, they have to be hit many, many times with your message and
It's
reasons why they
exactly that.
need that
Mm-hmm.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm happy to talk about it if asked, but I'm not an evangelist for it. But it's difficult to explain to somebody when you're at a normal weight and you look like a normal person, you act like a normal person eating 3 meals a day, and people are like, "Oh, you're being a bit extreme with this, aren't you?" Yeah, no, I'm not. But I know why. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Suzanne, how can people reach out to you? Do you have any social media or any way of getting in contact?
Yeah, I'm not on Twitter. That's definitely one that I haven't even touched. But I am on Facebook, and my name there is actually Dina Fisher. I don't want to give Facebook my real name, so it's Dinah, and Fisher like Carrie Fisher from Star Wars. So I am in many of the carnivore groups. Happy to chat anytime. That's me on the socials.
No worries. So I'll link to your Facebook in the show notes. Um, Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, Suzanne. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. It's been very interesting to sort of think it all through and say it all. and as one coherent sort of whole. Yeah, it's been very interesting for me to eat it.